Teacher's Toolbox. I'm Catherine Fortin, and today we're going to talk about behavior management. Behavior management is something that as teachers we all need to work on, and it's kind of a daily practice as I see it in my classes. Even after all the years of teaching I've had and continue to have, I practice on it daily, and there are top 10 behavior management tips that I'm going to give you today that hopefully will give you some clarity and help you out if you ever have some problem spots. Now, the first thing, number one, the teacher needs to do is establish trust and rapport with your students. Often, behavior problems and disruptions come from a place of anxiety in students, and we found over the years that if you just let your students know that you will meet their needs, and it may not be on their terms, but you will meet their needs, and you've had a lot of experience and you know what you're doing, that often they do become more trusting of what you have to offer every day. So establish that trust and rapport. Number two, pace and manage class activities in a seamless flow. This took me lots of practice, and I realized if I kept my students busy every minute of the class, first of all, a variety of activities, and secondly, if my transitions were very clear to them and smooth, then there wasn't any time for any behavior problems. Make sure that you give the students enough time to do activities, whether they're written or conversational, but let them know and you are transitioning into something else, and just keep that flow going from the minute they sit down with some sort of bell ringer activity, like a daily writing activity or partner conversation, until the very end of class when you might have a student recap what went on during the whole class. And that way, if your classes are tight, no gaps, no holes, you'll really minimize disruptions and behavior problems. Number three, circulate constantly in and among your students. This is something that we see frequently in class observations, where teacher is standing up in front the entire time, or teacher is standing in a corner. That is a recipe for students to immediately become distracted and the behavior issues start arising. Walk around their seats, walk amongst them, teach from different corners of the room. Something I've often tried is to try to teach from a different place in the room every single class, and just constantly move yourself. I often move around with my clipboard making notes on students, and so they know that they're being held accountable no matter what the activity. Number four, seating charts. The most basic Education 101 tool for the classroom. But again, especially in the secondary years, we often tend to forget about them. Students talk us out of a seating chart, but boy, are they effective. Different seating arrangements can really help the behavior and focus of a class. In my classes, I frequently move the seating around. We have a different seating arrangement for taking assessments, partner activity, group activity, and for when I present a lesson. I do tend to think that a better seating arrangement for instruction is where the teacher is in the center of the room if possible, and the seats are arranged in formation around him or her. This way you can spin around and walk around the whole time you're teaching and really keep an eye on things. And if you're a moving target, students have to pay attention to you. So make sure you circulate, you're on your feet and moving the whole classroom. Five, incentives. Students need incentives. They need good incentives for good behavior, as in participation for the older kids, stickers or stamps for the younger kids. They need those incentives to behave well and focus and be prepared and do what they need to do. Number six, behavioral goals. This is a great tool if you have a group or the whole class of students who spiraled into disruptive behaviors. And what I've done is take 5 minutes of English at the beginning of class, and I've literally said to a group, my goals for you this class are to A, not talk to your neighbor, B, raise your hand when you need to say something, and C, stay seated unless you need to get up to sharpen a pencil or go to the bathroom. Those are very specific, and you need to tailor them depending on the age. And then I write them on the board in English, or maybe in English and the target language for the older students. if you have a group that needs this, they need over behavioral goals and instruction and direction the entire class. And you do find yourself using a lot of the time for this, but it really is worth it in the end. So set behavioral goals. My goal for you, this class. 7, logical negative consequences. Diane and I recommend the book Love and Logic. It's a parenting book for all age groups, and we use quite a few of the techniques in the classroom. Logical negative consequences are consequences that happen naturally and logically to a student who is disruptive or misbehaves. And you can explain those at the beginning of class. For the older students, they can be point deductions. Younger students, you can have them come in for a time of recess. But it's never something so big and so punitive that the student becomes disheartened. It's a brief, slightly negative and logical consequence. And remember the book, Love and Logic. They're wonderful. And 8, address individual behavioral problems individually. If you have a student who tends to be distractible, disruptive, and doesn't really seem to have a handle on his or her own behavior, address this individually, alone with the student, apart from the class. If you address this to the student in front of the class, it will backfire and you may get your place in a situation where you never have rapport with that student. So remember, always address individual behavior problems and disruptions individually. Number 9, turn those ringleaders into class leaders. This is one of my favorites. Ringleaders are often very socially powerful and very clever and savvy in some ways. And if you get a ringleader on your side, ask them to help you, ask them to do some jobs in the class, or just talk to them one-on-one, especially at the high school level. That ringleader will do anything for you and will become your behavioral enforcer, I found. So get that ringleader to be your class leader. And number 10, stay close to the problem spots. This relates to circulating constantly in the classroom. If you go and give some instruction right behind the shoulder of a behavioral student or child, that child or student tends to not be as distracting. So again, stay close to those problem spots. As teachers, we don't want to isolate ourselves away from the class, especially in foreign language. We want to be within and among the students, and the students want to get to know you personally. As they do get to know you personally, again, their guard drops, your guard drops, and the trust and rapport really builds. If you have any questions or would like any other information, please see our website at foreignlanguagehouse.com. I'm Catherine Fortin, and good luck on your next class.